Hey everyone, I'm gonna go ahead and share this and going to pull this up and see what this is looking like. There we go. Got it. Let's go ahead and stop the share here really quick. Let me fix my pause for a moment and fix my share settings here really quick, and we'll get to it here. There we go. That way you don't need to see my entire screen. Perfect. Okay. Here we go. Oh, great. Hold on one second, everyone. Let's stretch this out here a little bit. Let me screw around with my my stuff while I'm waiting for everyone to kind of roll in. Here we go. All right. Drag that. Okay, well, every time I do that, it looks like it's going to drag that down. So let's go ahead and fix that. There we go. All right, cool. Okay, let's talk. I've been doing Facebook Lives, mostly just requests from our members, things they may want to learn more about, things they may want to, I would say, get some help on. So I'm always taking requests for these. If you want any of the other coaches to do any of them as well too, if we have any questions that need any kind of specialty knowledge, then just, pitch them to me and we can kind of go from there. But today is about heart rate variability and resting heart rate. What is it? Understanding the measurement, what it's good for, how to improve it, the cascade of effects, what is resting heart rate, understanding that, how to improve that, and kind of the relationship between the two. And it's all very surface level. I don't think I'll do like any really, really deep dives. If anyone wants to go like deeper on some of this stuff, you can feel free to reach out to me and we can jam on some stuff. But let's go ahead and get after it. So, there we go. What is heart rate variability? Well, put simply, heart rate variability is a measure of the variation in time between each heartbeat. And a healthy heart doesn't tick like a metronome. It's got some variability and like timing within each beat. And it's controlled by our autonomic nervous system, our ANS, which regulates heart rate, blood pressure, breathing, digestion, and that's divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So the SNS and the PNS. So it's the fight or flight or the relax. So the kind of two branches there. Understanding the measurement. This is pulled from Whoop. Whoop seems to have like a decent amount of data. Whoop, Aura, any of the wearables that you look at here. But if you're understanding the measurement, generally what you're looking at is that a higher number is better than a lower number. And you notice that this may change with age. Genetics have a factor in to play within all of this stuff. But if you're extremely out of these norms, you may want to start asking questions in either direction. So typically what you want is somewhat of a consistency, and I'll give you some context for that. So you will have daily fluctuations. You will have seasonal fluctuations. So understanding around like hard training blocks of program design or sickness, like there's a lot of factors that impact your ANS and in turn your HRV. For instance, if I'm writing a program for somebody and they're in an accumulation period or an intensification period, and we're getting more and more aggressive within one of those, you may see it drop slightly. You want to keep an eye on it at that point, and you can't just keep doing hard stuff forever. You can't just accumulate forever. You can't just do intense work forever. You need periods of rest, post-stress. You know, but in these cases, you might see it actually drop a little over time. Now, to the opposite side of things, if you don't see your HRV drop a little in training, you may not be stressing the system enough to actually get an adaptation. So you actually need some kind of stressor to show for adaptation on that. But what you want to keep an eye out for is like trends over time where things are going downward. Okay. And as you see, like it generally decreases with age, but higher HRVs in general typically have a lot to do with cardiovascular health, fitness, willpower, calm and positive emotions, your ability to handle stress and exercise. Low HRV is usually associated with stress and chronic pain and depression, low emotional flexibility. So they have used HRV values to predict like injury recovery and certain outcomes of illnesses. But again, some of the science is new on some of that stuff. But yeah, like HRV and willpower do have somewhat of a link, it would seem, to it. Like it's a huge predictor of persistence and self-control, and it increases when exerting self-regulation, the pause and plan response. So, and again, there is some genetic factor within this stuff. You know, it's more helpful to follow the trends for yourself. You start measuring it and you look at it over time and you figure out what your baseline is. And there's some things we'll talk about that you can do to like move that needle. And I can't remember where the resources I got from this. Maybe it was looking at Huberman or some of the other individuals where they say that it's hard to move it more than 50% of the baseline. So if your baseline's 20, it's hard to get it over 30, so on and so forth. But you can have an influence on it. And I guess that really does depend on like how much opportunity do you have to actually make an increase on it as well. So yeah, how knowing your HRV can help. Yeah, no one wants to just buy a drill. Okay, meaning you buy a drill because you want to put a hole in the wall. You don't want to just put a hole in the wall. You want to put a screw in the wall, and you want to put that on there to hang a picture. And no one just wants to put a picture on the wall. They want a picture on the wall because they want the feeling or emotion that they get when they see it, or when they feel like their house is organized and well put together, right? So knowing the number itself isn't really going to do much for us. It is all about improving your physiological state. The number is a reflection of your physiological state, influenced by your behaviors, your thoughts, your emotions. Okay. Yeah, and if you want to change your physiological state, we got to ask questions about that. Like, hey, I want to improve my HRV. Why do you want to improve that? Well, you know, my energy, I'm crashing in the middle of the day, or I'm just not recovering, or I just want an opportunity to look deeper into certain things. I just want to see, is there an opportunity for me to make improvements on any of these? You know, and it gives you insights into, well, it can give you insights indirect into stress and recovery and general well-being. You do need to connect that HRV, and you need to ask, well, why is it low, or why is it excessively high? Okay. One of the things I think we've used it for in the past is connecting individuals to themselves. You'd be surprised at how many individuals aren't really in tune with their own body and their signals and signs and things that you may be out of health. Okay. Yeah, and no one wants to just look at HRV forever, right? No one wants to weigh and measure their food forever. So we do want to try to take this number and connect it to your thoughts and your emotions and your behaviors. And the numbers can be helpful as you're going through that journey to give you a feedback mechanism on, you know, oh, I do this, my number goes down, and I also feel really bad. Or I do this, my number goes up, and I actually feel really good. So eventually what you want to do is ditch that and be able to pay attention to yourself rather than outsource your, you know, being in tune with your own body, so to speak. Oh, yeah, how to improve it. Gosh, it's so if we're looking to improve it, we just go back to a lot of the basics. Okay. So first, you do have to again notice it, and you have to connect it to behaviors, thoughts, emotions, because those things are the things that we'll have to adjust. Um, and then, so training, for instance, you want to have a plan that undulates up and down, that meets you where you're at. You want a training plan that stresses you enough within your capabilities and pulls back when you need to pull back. And then it scaffolds that over time. When you're sick, that training should pull back. When you, when you're really stressed at work, maybe we pull it back, or maybe you can, move through it, right? BLGs, okay, basic lifestyle guidelines. You want to improve it. A lot of these things, I mean, do a quick Google search on HRV, resting heart rate. Okay. What you're going to see is like, oh, nasal breathing or breath work. But what is that? That is a way to reduce stress, just stress on the body. So alcohol. I think alcohol has you have a few drinks, it may dip your HRV for about 5 days. So if you drink every Saturday, it doesn't surprise me that your HRV would just be tanked weekly, just over time, right? Hydration, sleep, and sleep hygiene, meaning like, oh, I'm not just laying down and then waking up at a certain time. It's dark, it's cool, it's uninterrupted, it's everything that you want in a sleep cycle. It's ideally more prior to midnight, at least 10 p.m. or so, or maybe even earlier, rather than going to bed at 1 or 2, if you can avoid it, right? So nutrition and food hygiene, and in turn digestion, chewing your food, sitting down, not stressing. Stress, breathing practices that activate the PNS, the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay. Rhythm with your meals, with your wake and sleep time. So eating meals within the same time each day, generally, not like exactly on the minute, right? But waking up when you can in the morning at the same times and going to sleep. And then again, making sure that sleep cycle's long enough. Getting enough sunlight, getting enough movement. Gosh, there's so many things. Social connection, journaling, meditation. Really what you get with that is the reduction of stress, the breathing practices that we mentioned as well too before. So a lot of different ways, and really us as coaches, and I can talk about like this holistic approach. I'll kind of fast forward to that, is that you come to me and your HRV is low, and we have to look at a lot of things and say, well, what opportunities, 24 hours in a day? Let's look at the last, 3 days of everything, wake time, sleep time. And then we just extract these opportunities to say, okay, well, if you would like to improve this HRV, which is really what you want to improve your health just overall, right? Then here are the things that we need to do to get there. So, and it's up to you to get those things done, or decide whether you're like, hey, I'm going to go out on Saturdays and drink, and I'm okay with this, right? It's all about balance. The cascade of effects. I thought this was we're going to do an oversimplification of a couple of these. It's training. Very often people get fixated on training, whereas like, hey, exercise is the flashy thing, it's the sexy thing. Nutrition is like, oh yeah, no, nutrition is important. But physical stress, mental and emotional stress, and sleep quality and quantity, and nutrition and hydration and illness, infection and chronic infections, and environmental factors and lifestyle factors. There's so much that goes, into stress in your body. For instance, if I have somebody who's looks great on paper, right? Great nutrition, great sleep cycles, and good training consistency, but they go in and hate their job every single day to the core of their being, and it just stresses them out every day. I would expect a lot of negative effects and adaptation to training because of that. We'll just be spinning our wheels. Why aren't you getting stronger? Why aren't these things happening? Because those stressors really do matter. Okay. So for instance, I'll pull a few of them out. So let's use like emotional stress. So you have emotional stress at work, whether it's like even blips through the day or even like a chronic kind of emotional stress, or maybe you have something outside of the gym that's just like a low hum of stress, something that's weighing on your head that triggers your fight or flight to certain degrees. That decreases your HRV because you're in a heightened state of alert. And if your HRV is always low, you're always ready to respond to perceived threats. You're in a state of constant low-grade activation, which impedes recovery. It impedes recovery because it's prioritizing resources for immediate survival rather than digestion and actually getting nutrients into the body and, so on and so forth. So like resource allocation, blood flow is going to be directed toward the muscles and away from processes that aren't critical in the moment, like digestion and immune function. So you're going to have a hard time, again, repairing and recovering. It'll have a hormonal impact. It triggers the release of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, which they're great for immediate threats. And your body doesn't really know the difference between you getting mad at your boss 5 times a day and like a bear attack 5 times a day, right? So prolonged bouts of these things will inhibit tissue repair and growth, just disrupting sleep patterns. You'll have issues with growth hormone as well, which is important for tissue repair and muscle growth at night as well. Energy systems, we're still on stress, we're still on emotional stress, and like the cascade of effects, it affects how the body uses energy. It tends to burn through glucose for immediate quick energy, which leaves less available for the recovery process, which leads to fatigue. And people are like, oh, I'm just, I had a hard day at work yesterday and I can't lift what I could last week. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. No shit, of course. So, and then there's, psychological stress, constant alertness leads to constant psychological stress, which is a barrier to recovery. Like you can't relax. You can't give your body the rest that it needs to then express and do better time over time. Let's do hydration. Hydration, I chose that one. I wanted to get like a more abstract one, like emotional stress. And then hydration, it's when you're hydrated, blood volume's maintained. You have efficient circulation and oxygen delivery to muscles and organs. And when you're not hydrated, the body's going to struggle to maintain blood pressure and circulation efficiency. And that leads to a sympathetic or like a stress activity, which lowers heart rate. And that's how it kind of ties into that. By the way, good hydration, 0.5 to 0.6 ounces per pound of body weight. I weigh 198. I typically tend to drink around a gallon or so a day. No, I'm not a fan of the 75 hard, a female who's 128 pounds drinking a gallon of water a day, like, excessively. That can mess you up a little bit. Drinking too much water can mess you up a little bit. So keep that in mind. But anyways, back to it. So that's how that ties into in HRV, but like let alone issues it has with thermoregulation and fatigue and endurance and motivation. Flushing out toxins. Can't say toxins today. Transporting nutrients, cognitive function and mood. And there's so much that has to do with hydration. It's such a basic one, but those can cause more stress, which then can lower HRV as well too. And then pain. I don't even know if I have pain on here. Pain. Yeah. Pain, pain is a really complicated topic, by the way. And chronic stress, people who are like, my elbow's just not getting better and my knee's just not getting better. Well, chronic stress with a low HRV heightens the body's sensitivity to pain. Whereas like if you checked off all those basic lifestyle guidelines, you could be at a low hum, not even notice the pain. One out of 10, like, oh, occasionally when I go upstairs, I kind of feel it. But if you looked at that BLG list and you've got a lot of work and you've got a low HRV, it can heighten the body's sensitivity to pain. And when the SNS is overactive, it can amplify those signals. So keep that in mind as well too. The opposite side of things is when you have a high HRV, a more active parasympathetic response, it's reduced. It can help reduce your pain perception. So another one, nutrition. Let's use being hypocaloric for too long. So trying to lean out or under eating for too long. So that is an increased stress response. Prolonged calorie deficit is a stressor. Stressors are good for short amounts of time, okay, and not forever for sure. But being hypocaloric, if you're trying to lean out, it's just the thing that you probably eventually have to create some kind of deficit over time. But your body actually needs to be able to handle that stressor. Otherwise, you could be, I put it as putting a screw in with a hammer. You'll get the job done, but you're probably going to mess some other things up along the way. But yeah, that impairs recovery. You get lack of nutrients, which is, again, additional stressor on the body. And, calorie restriction can lead to disrupting sleep patterns and also affect hormonal balance as well, too. So there's a lot of things that these things like being hypocaloric or pain or how it influences with pain or hydration or otherwise. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. Boop. Look at this. Look at this. I like this resting heart rate lady. Use this as some stock photos. But there you go. That's essentially how you're doing it. What is resting heart rates? The number of heartbeats per minute when you're at rest. Typically, you're going to go here. You can use a radial artery. There's, brachial. You can use a lot of different arteries. It doesn't matter, but it's the number of heartbeats per minute when you're at rest. Understanding the measurement. This one's going to be like real short, straightforward, because I feel like I don't need to go too in depth with this. I mean, it generally ranges between 60 to 100. I put lower equals better. Not always true. If it's on the lower side and you're an athletic person and you're waking up and you're, really high level cyclists who their hearts just don't have to pump that hard, or at least they're so efficient that it doesn't have to beat very frequently to get blood to the extremities, right? It's going to be lower. So you might see it in the high 30s. Okay. And if you look at that person and they're very athletic and they have no other symptoms and they're like, oh, I feel great day in, day out, good energy, good libido. I'm hungry. I have no other things going on with me health-wise. I'm performing really well and it's on the lower side. Cool. Now, obviously, lower you go, you're like, oh, okay, we need to talk about this. Or if it's low, even if you're an athlete, you don't want to just discount it as like, okay, well, they're an athlete and it's low. If you have some symptoms of something, it's best to get it checked out, right? And higher, well, I mean, some of this can be genetic as well, too, but higher is also not the greatest for sure. It's just, it can be a measure of your heart's efficiency, okay? 60 is typically like the standard, again, more athletic, it goes down, but you get higher and higher and higher. And we're talking let's say waking heart rate. You wake up, you check it right when you wake up in the morning. So understanding that measurement is that lower resting heart rate is a more efficient heart and better cardiac efficiency to a certain degree. And then high can be various health issues. High blood pressure, heart disease, overactive thyroid, stress, dehydration, lack of sleep, poor fitness, You get the idea, how to improve it. I just see the HRV slide. A lot of the same things. Obviously genetic factors, family history of illness. If you have anything that's cardiac related or otherwise, you may want to get that checked out. Those can definitely play a part if you have some condition that is predisposing it to be high or low. So again, talk to your doctor about that stuff. The relationship between the two, fight or flight raises the heart rate. And over time, you can have consistently high waking levels. Okay. So if you're waking up and you're checking your heart rate every morning and you wake up and it's the 70s or 80s, and you're like, okay, maybe I'll look and see what opportunities. It's a measurement once again to say, well, I don't feel that great also combined with this. So how are these behaviors going to help this? So Yeah. What else can you look at? Oh gosh, this is like looking at health measurements in general. These numbers inform us to look at other things. Either other numbers to dial in. You can look at, blood panels, or you can look at, gosh, there's so many like health metrics. But really what I like to is turn to watching your behaviors and your thoughts and your emotions and just how your body feels just in general throughout a day. So you got to take a look at those signs and symptoms. So yeah, I'm not going to pull very specific things out of this. I was going to pull all kinds of other, I'd say like numbers and data, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, so I had a few questions. One was, first and foremost, I'm trying to separate myths from the actual truth about both. This was these are questions submitted from an individual who wanted to learn more about this. And like I said, the science on a lot of these things is newer, but there is some good stuff out there. And I can send some of the research articles and stuff like that if you'd like. But you got to be careful where you're getting that stuff from. If you're getting it from Whoop or you're getting it from Aura, I have an Aura ring. I use an Aura ring. If you're getting it from that, they have a product they're trying to sell you. So they're very often going to tell you how, like, you just can't live without HRV. Like, how can you even possibly live without it? I know I'm, that's not always the case, but they're there to sell you a product. So just be careful with that. But some myths is that a higher HRV is always better. Higher HRVs are generally associated with like good health and fitness, but like extremely high HRV can sometimes indicate health issues or like an imbalanced autonomic nervous system. Another one, HRV is only about heart health. Well, it's a measure of heart rhythm, but it's more indicative of a balance between your ANS and your PNS as well too. How does your body handle stress? How does it recover? How's your overall well-being? And again, there's usually trends with a lot of those things. That it can predict heart attacks. No, I don't believe so, unless there's some research out there that I'm just not aware of right now, but it's not a predictive tool yet for specific events like heart attacks. Although there is some really interesting stuff on using Aura data and other things to predict like illness prior. I've noticed personally that like prior to sickness, I will feel quite amazing like the day before. I will like and I'd have to take a look at the mechanism. Like HRV comes up and I feel good. And maybe my immune system is just bumping. I'm like, man, I feel strong. And then the next day, boom, it just tanks. So interesting stuff there. That you can significantly change it overnight is another myth. Yeah, it's a gradual process that involves changing behaviors or thoughts and emotions. Regular training, stress management, good sleep habits, quick fixes like, all right, I'm just going to throw in this one breathing practice just to watch the number change. And I feel like you're kind of missing the point there. You want to change your behaviors to change your nervous system to lead to overall better health, which will then reflect in the HRV number. So slow, patient, consistent, simple habits over time consistently. Another myth is that like HRV, it's like very often, depending on the target market within marketing, it's like, hey, this is for these athletes. Well, it can be valuable for athletes. I've had athletes send me their HRV data so I can see like how far are we pushing it. Doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, but yeah, it can provide insights into stress and recovery and all that stuff. You do want to be careful if you have a wearable like Whoop, like Aura, when you're looking at their recovery score. It's like, oh, here's your activity and here's this and here's this. Well, if I go out and do a really hard resistance training session, my Aura ring has no idea. It thinks it's like, hey, you need to move more, like walk more today specifically. So whenever you have a wearable, try to understand how it's arriving at the number that it's using here. How is it using this number? So for instance, the Apple Watch and the zones on an Apple Watch. Zones on an Apple Watch is they're taking your age and some information about you, and they're putting it through I would say it's typically the classic heart rate zone formula, which is not individualized to everyone. So you can be like, oh, it says I'm in this zone, but I'm actually feeling like this. So these numbers are not always individualized as much as they try to say that they are. So keep that in mind. And it's only one part. So like when you're trying to close the rings on your Apple Watch, that's just one little part of what fitness could be. It's just showing you moved around a lot today. Let's see. Yeah. Again, the HRV, another myth is that like, all right, this is everything I need to know about health. And I see this again on social media a lot as of late. Everything, body fat percentage, strength, HRV tells you varying amounts about your health. Overall health isn't just one of these dimensions, and especially the one dimension that this person wants to argue about on Instagram, right? So keep that in mind. And that all HRV monitors are like equally accurate. So it can vary depending on the device and methodology and how you're wearing it and using it. Clinical grade monitors are generally more accurate than consumer grade fitness trackers. Where you're wearing it will have slight changes in it as well too. Yeah, another question. Also, I'd love to know if those two things impact day-to-day life, health, and longevity. Yeah, I think we've covered that pretty well. More appropriately, your day-to-day life impacts your health and longevity. So let's flip that. Again, HRV is a measurement of your autonomic nervous system. And if you're in a sympathetic state for too often, what's going to happen? Cardiovascular disease, depression, anxiety, fatigue, ANS dysfunction, where like you can't really, you'll have hard time regulating heart rate and blood pressure and thermoregulation, poor sleep, reduced cognitive function. And again, everything of those, not one thing exists by itself. You get poor sleep, you crave carbs, your digestion is going to be shot, you're going to have poor cognitive function, like all of these things, which creates stress, which creates a feedback loop. It's, again, the behaviors resulting in the measurement that impact day-to-day life. Yeah, I'm wanting to understand how to measure improvement, meaning I've been tracking both these metrics for a while and I can see improvements, but I'm not sure what that means in simple terms of what I should aim for. Yeah, and I think I answered this one too. It's rather than talking about measuring improvement on this, what are you experiencing physically within your body, if anything, that you're trying to improve? What is your intention with using this wearable? Yeah. Are you recovering well? Do you have good resilience to things, both emotionally and physically? Do you get sick too often? Do you get sick not enough, which is also a thing? People who are like, oh, I haven't been sick in years. That's also not a good thing. Yeah. Are you performing consistently well over time? Do you have stable mood, good emotional regulation, quality sleep, blood pressure? I can pull up if you just take a moment to after this, Precision Nutrition has a really good stress web as well too, going over cultural and financial and environmental and, physical, emotional stressors, all of those things have an impact. Yeah, gosh. And I think that's about it. And feel free to, post some comments. This is just a real quick overview of this stuff. Yeah, I see that this does have a place. I think I've talked with our staff and our coaches about this as well too, especially when they became very much in vogue for people to wear. Is that like, you get some arguments on one side where individuals think that it just makes you blind to your own body and just put you in tune to it. But I think if you're wearing it for the right reasons with the right intention, it can be really helpful insight. Yeah, not the end all be all, but in a holistic coaching method, the idea is we meet you where you're at. And if you're disconnected from your body and it's, these signals that your body is putting off, like, hey, you're in some trouble here, then sometimes the subjective data can really like snap you too. You can wear it and you're like, oh, wow, my HRV is really low. Hey, we may want to look at other things. If you feel like you want to make changes right now, we can talk about that. But over time, I can tell you that statistically, probably not a good thing for it to be excessively low for too long. So yeah, you got any questions about it? Hit me up, Brandon at CrossFitSouthBend.com, or on Facebook or wherever, or walk up to me in the gym, and we'll kind of go from there. But yeah, that's it.